Welcome to Booked, where two guys tell you about the books they're reading. I'm Livius Nedden.
And I'm Rob Olson. This is a special occasion for 2019 because we're about to do something we haven't done since the beginning of May. And that's not review a book or interview an author.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought to myself, we need a break. We need a break, so we need to do an interlude. But then I realized that we just had a break, so we skipped a week.
Yeah.
Just a couple weeks ago. But that didn't feel like a break. That just felt like shirking responsibility to me. So this was truly a break. Like we had a scheduled interlude episode. And we didn't read anything we're going to talk about. I may talk about some of the stuff I read, but we're not going to review a book, which feels weird now.
Yeah, I think it bears mentioning that in the week that we had, I'm putting up the air quotes, off, how many books do we usually read in a week, Livius?
1.
How many did you read in the week we had off?
2.
So I think you did that backwards. I need a break.
Quite honestly, I probably would have been well through a third one, but we'll talk about that on next week's episode. So
yeah.
It's funny because I feel weird when I'm very much I like to follow the same routines. So I go to work, I go to lunch, I hop in my car, I pull in the drive-thru, absentmindedly reaching for my Kindle inside my bag, and I'm like, wait, I'm not reading anything. And then I sit there confused, I don't know what to do with my time because I should pull out a book. Well, it's this bad. I pull up, I get to the speaker, I order my food. Once I order my food, as I move up, I pull my book out, I turn on the Kindle, I flip the little reporter cover over. I throw it on the dashboard. I pay for my food. I set my food down. I pull into a parking spot, and I put my Kindle on the steering wheel. Then I go into my bag, and and then I proceed to eat and read. I have a hard time eating food
when
you're
not reading.
Have my routine. So that's
That's I get it. I get it. I did have nights where I'm like, kind of similar, routine type feeling where get home, do my usual kind of relaxing, settling in, kind of chilling for a little bit. And then I get to a moment in the evening where it's like, why don't I have anything to do? So I get it.
So yeah, I did read 2 books for anybody that's interested. The 2 books that I read this past week were Holy Death, which is a Billy Lafitte book. It's number 4 in the Billy Lafitte series by Anthony Neal Smith, which I've had in my possession for over 2 years now, and somehow just got around to reading it. Enjoyable. I like the direction it took. Very good on that one. The other one was a little weird for me, because it's the first time I've read, what is a legendary author, and it's a weird, kind of nonfiction book, A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. You're familiar? Hemingway, you've heard of the guy?
I think so. Yeah.
He wrote some stuff. Have you ever read any Hemingway?
I've not. I do know that his granddaughter is married to the guy that invented the Dexter series.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's interesting. Not the direction you expected that conversation to go, I bet.
No, not at all. Well, this is, I don't know. It's weird because it's kind of autobiographical, but even in the book, he kind of says that some of it's fiction. So whatever. It was recommended by a friend of the podcast, Kevin Lynn Helmick, who thought I would enjoy it because of the numerous, it's all about Hemingway's time in Paris. So there is a lot of Parisian speak happening in there, and it was enjoyable, but it was very different because it was published after he died, so it's a little choppy, and it seems like this was an unfinished work kind of put together, but it was weird because it's not so much a story as a series of vignettes about him living in Paris and the people he hung out with and stuff. Aleister Crowley gets a mention in there, which is a little weird, something you don't expect.
That's interesting.
It's actually I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Let's say this. It's actually a funny anecdote. I don't know who the person is. Hemingway is sitting with somebody, and he's at a cafe, and someone else walks by, and this person claims they gave the person a stink eye. Mm-hmm. They go, oh, that's so and so, and did you see how I gave him the stink eye? And he looked away and walked away, and At any rate, the guy who Hemingway is with leaves, and as he walks by again, the guy walks past, coming the other way, like back from where he's coming from, and he says to someone else, "Oh, look, there's so and so." My companion gave him the stink eye, and he's like, "Dude, that's not so and so. That's Aleister Crowley." So kind of cool that in 1920s in Paris, Ernest Hemingway could be sitting in a cafe as Aleister Crowley walks by. Kind of a small world situation.
Kind of things you don't expect to read about, I guess.
Yeah, he's not who I thought would come up. I expected, Picasso would have Scott Fitzgerald and all like the famous
right
people from that gang.
Even a Salvador Dali or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, That's what I did. What'd you do with your week off?
I watched 7 Friday the 13th movies.
So all right, I have questions.
All right, so context on our recent, I think it was September, I had a Friday the 13th. It must have been because it's October 1st right now. So on Friday the 13th, iTunes had a sale where Friday the 13th numbers 1 through 8 were $12.99, so $13. I was like, $13 for 8 movies? Duh. So I bought them. And then I didn't watch them on Friday the 13th. But I was just kind of like filling a void. I felt like, man, I bought these. I should probably watch. It's been so long. And I didn't watch the first one because I think, it's the one that I've seen more than pretty much any other. So I started with part 2 and I watched, I watched through Jason Takes Manhattan part 8. And man, like, and I paid attention. It wasn't like, because you watch a movie that you've seen before or whatever, and you just kind of like, you hear it while you're doing other shit. Like, I actually like paid attention to the films. It was interesting.
How much did you say it was for these movies?
$13.
Yeah, you overpaid.
Why?
Like just after like the second part, after part 2, it's all
because they're garbage.
Downhill. Oh my god. They're so bad. It's funny because I couldn't remember what number it was. While you were saying that before you got to Jason Takes Manhattan, all I wanted to ask was, did you fucking watch Jason Takes Manhattan too? Because that's...
yeah. And so the thing that I've noticed is there's kind of... I guess you could probably graph this, but in the beginning, it's like high levels of poor acting, bad effects, and tons of naked women. And then as the series goes on, better acting, in quotes, better effects, way fewer naked women. So I think they really chose to go in a specific direction, which, whatever, it makes sense as they became a more popular series and stuff. But and the body count went up steadily. I think the first movie maybe had like 10 or 11 total deaths, and by Jason Takes Manhattan it's like 25.
Yeah, it's something that was happening around that time, like the mid to late 80s. It's all of them were like, how do we get the body count higher? So because I was thinking about that before you said that, so I found a count. It's based on 12 films. So the 8 that you purchased plus the other 4, which are Jason X and a new Friday the 13th or whatever. Would you like to take a guess at how many people Jason killed?
Oh, that's tricky because, like, I'm going to assume that it's a Jason kill. Like, whether it's Jason himself or, like, because, like, in Jason Goes to Hell, it's like he's inhabiting other people. Mm-hmm. So that's all inclusive. I want to say 125.
That is frighteningly close. So this target is 146.
Hey.
So I'm assuming, kind of like you said, I'm assuming that includes, spoiler alert, his mom killing people in the first one. Mm-hmm. And while we're on it, you're fairly familiar with Michael Myers, right?
And not nearly as much. You're way more of an expert, yeah.
Yeah. So in 10 Michael Myers films, and this article this article's from 2009, so that would not count the reboot, the recent reboot. Well, more or less than Jason.
I would imagine less.
Yeah. 2/3, 94. Only 94 people.
Yeah.
How about Freddy Krueger? You got anything on Freddy?
How many films? Can you give me that?
8.
8 films. So that's the original, like, Nightmare on Elm Street through whatever. Does that include
there's
Freddy
no
versus
actual
Jason?
list.
Okay.
I would imagine so.
I'm going to give him... I want to say Jason still kills more. I'm going to give him, like, 105.
He only kills 35.
Oh, Jesus. Freddy's a little bitch.
Fucking lame, yeah. Lame. A lame sauce.
Well, he really limits himself by, like, I have to be in your dream. Like, come on. Jason can kill anybody, anytime, anywhere.
That's true. Yeah, I'm sure somebody has done, and I'm probably going to look it up, because you know what? It's October, right? Like the kind of parallel between Jason and Michael Myers is interesting, because they were introduced around the same time with the kind of exact same skill set. Like, I wear a mask, I don't talk, so I'm interested to see if someone has done a really deep dive. So I may have to look that up in the coming weeks leading up to Halloween. Maybe I'll share the results on our Halloween Spooktacular episode.
Did I send you my message? How I thought the interesting thing about because like watching the first movie, that all the killing, it's revealed at the end of the first movie, all the killing is done by the mom, out of revenge for the counselors letting her son die while they were like out boning or whatever. So that's a revenge flick for her son dying, and she dies in that movie. And then, so the second movie is the son getting revenge for her mom dying because she was getting revenge for her son dying. And it's just kind of funny that's
it is
how it all, yeah.
That's why revenge is it's always one of those things. There's always someone else to get revenge, right? I mean, at some point, I have to imagine, and I don't remember. I mean, I watched these. I don't want to say as they came out, but as they came out for the most part.
Yeah.
At some point, someone's probably trying to get revenge and looking for Jason because Jason killed a loved one of theirs.
Oh yeah, and then that's the whole, like, if you're trying to get revenge, dig 2 graves or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Whatever that saying is. I just like not to make this is the Friday the 13th deep dive analysis episode or anything, but like the one thing I noticed is the only time like psychology came into effect with like the defeat or weakening of Jason in these movies was either someone was trying to make him believe that they were his mom, or that they were him, like as a kid, like the kid that drowned or whatever. Mm-hmm. So like it's this like weird trauma focused thing. Just interesting. And Corey Feldman was a pivotal part of like one of the movies. I don't know. It's just a weird. But there was a guy trying to get revenge on Jason in the whichever one Corey Feldman was in, because Jason killed his, like, I don't know, sibling or whatever. A lot of revenge. A lot of boobs.
A lot of revenge and less boobs as time goes on.
Yeah, it's probably better. Probably for the better.
Yeah. All right.
That was my week. Way more explanation to my week than yours.
Keep reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I'm just shocked that that's how you spent your week. I'm just still stunned. Like, we talked about, like, we had a conversation about it, and then I had to remind myself, like, oh yeah, he watched 7 Friday the 13th movies in a row. I mean, like,
it's pretty random.
over a course of days, yeah.
So, that's not the only thing that I watched this week, and I know you watched it too, and it's pretty exciting. So do you want to talk about what that is? So
I'm not sure the world needed this thing that happened, but Creepshow was rebooted.
Yeah.
And the reason that Rob says it's exciting isn't so much that we were excited about a Creepshow reboot. I was not. Do you remember? Did you see any of the Creepshow like movies?
I am going to tell you. So I don't think so. However, all right, I'm going to start this with a question. Was there at any point like someone get. Well, this is gonna sound so dumb because it's so vague in my mind. Someone dies, they get buried, and then someone's like visiting their grave, and he comes up out of the ground asking for his cake or something like that.
Maybe.
Because that scared the shit out of me, and I think it was creep. I think it was.
It could be.
Yeah, but I was so young.
Yeah, well, it was 1982.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
so that was we were both very young at the time. I do remember seeing Creepshow. I don't remember being really excited by it. They did do a Creepshow 2, and then much more recently Creepshow 3. So stalling a little bit. So it blows up. 2006 was Creepshow 3. So I'm not sure the world needed a new Creepshow. It's on Shudder. So, look, nobody actually subscribes to Shudder, but they do have a 7-day free trial that you can use if you want to see the first episode of Creepshow, or if you want to wait a month or two to catch this. But the first episode was Stephen King, so a story by Stephen King, which that's kind of cool, right? Called Gray Matter. The thing that we were excited about was Josh Mallerman's The House of the Head. These are the two stories that appear in the first episode of Creepshow, and they're each like 20-ish minutes long. That's where the excitement came from.
Yeah, so this is something that kind of hit our radar. I think early, like a few months back, they started to like hype it up, and like they listed all the authors who had written stories for the show and stuff, and Stephen King's name flew out there. Mallerman's name flew out there, and I was like, all right, I want to see how someone adapts a Mallerman story to the screen, like obviously aside from Bird Box. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to check it out. But again, like, not something that I was like super excited in, like, oh, this is like something from my youth I can relive or whatever, just because really the allure was Mallerman. And it's one of those things where I think it's 6 or 7 episodes or something. It's not a lot of episodes, and each one is maybe 40 minutes long. It's 7 episodes, and they're like full, like, with commercials cut out, hour-long type episodes, split in half. So each one has 2 stories. So it's interesting, kind of anthological. But yeah, dude, I really enjoyed both the stories, but I think Mallerman's was more kind of that, like, this could happen to me kind of scare, which I always enjoy.
We're gonna have to examine that maybe off the air. Yeah, so I'm super happy for Josh. First of all, getting something else, a short story adapted into something that's got a little bit of news behind it, right? Because it's a Creepshow, it's a reboot. Second of all, what better place than at the first episode, and then with Stephen King?
Yeah, alongside Stephen King. Yeah,
I'm not sure who all the writers are that are credited in this, but I find it hard to believe there's a name bigger than Stephen King.
Right.
So Stephen King adjacency is cool. I'll be honest, I didn't like the Stephen King story. I thought it was predictable and it was hokey. And the more I thought about this, I went down this kind of rabbit hole of, all right, I really like Josh's story, and there's a lot to talk about in Josh's story. All I'm going to say is that this is no pun intended when I say it this way. It's interesting to see like small scale horror.
Yep.
Like, here's a very localized situation. It's really a small story, and seeing how that can be scary or frightening is great. Stephen King's just reminded me of the old, like, there's a show called Monsters. There's a show called Tales from the Dark Side. And it reminded me very much of that. But I thought to myself, like, okay, people pay millions of dollars to produce Stephen King video, we'll call it. So, whatever, TV series or movies and stuff. So I'm not surprised that we got a meh Stephen King story out of it. Mm-hmm. Where somebody like Josh, I'm sure, put his best foot forward and when asked to participate or whatever, like, really gave up some of his best work. You know what I mean? So there's that difference between being Stephen King and getting paid millions for your stories. So when something like this comes up, you're like, oh, I've got this one thing, and some kind of cast off story, so to speak, versus like the really good stuff. So I really thought Josh's story shined. And I think, obviously he's a talented writer. But man, after watching those two, he did a better job than Stephen King for whatever the reason, and I'm proud of him.
I agree. Like the Stephen King story was, I'm going to use the word serviceable, and to your point, he might have just been like, all right, well, here's something that is not in development somewhere else or XYZ. The old Stephen Graham Jones, I went to one of my hard drives, and dug up a story.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So he might not have put the effort in that. I could see Josh Mallory, because he's such like he's so in love with like horror and the history of horror. Like I could see him seeing the opportunity to participate in like the reawakening of a classic horror thing would be very exciting to him.
Yeah. So I definitely like that the better of the two. But it was fun overall.
Yeah.
I will say that the Crypt Keeper, he's in case you're not aware, he's the whatever MC. He's the guy they show before and after the episodes. It's 2019. I felt like they could have done a better job with him.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like they stopped by that Spirit of Halloween or whatever, like, store right before they started filming. Not a lot of effort, or at least they just wanted it to look campy, maybe? I don't know. But not super impressed. Can I say one thing about Josh's story?
Sure.
Without really spoiling it, but there's a dollhouse involved, and the cinematography involved with like moving the camera view from like one part of the dollhouse inside one part of the dollhouse to another, they did that so fucking well. I think that had they filmed it differently, the impact of the story would not have been as good. But like the way they filmed the movement around that dollhouse was excellent. I don't know if you paid attention to it.
I did. I thought, all right, I have a couple of problems with the episode I'm not going to get into here. Whatever. Yes, I agree that cinematographically.
Sure.
Yeah, cinematography was good. It was definitely good. Like I said, it's just interesting. Like, it didn't really depend on jump scares or anything like that. And like I said, it's a really small scale story that delivered. So I liked it.
Yep. So I'll probably watch all of them. I don't see why I wouldn't. Nothing's holding me back from that, from this first episode. But I'm not like, Penny Dreadful excited about it.
No. Are you excited about that new Penny Dreadful? Dia de los Muertos or whatever it's called?
I don't think that's what it's called.
Okay.
But I'm cautiously it's City of Angels. I'm cautiously.
Why did they think it was called Dia de los Muertos? Okay, right.
I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. But I'm cautiously optimistic. There are a few people in there that I'm very excited to see. Primarily Natalie Dormer. You know who Natalie Dormer is?
I do. I'm well aware.
Yeah, really like her. Rory Kinnear, who was the monster in the original Penny Dreadful series, is in it. So pretty excited about that. I don't know how Nathan Lane's going to turn out, but he's in it. So,
yeah, I'm not sure who he is.
He was in the Birdcage with Robin Williams. He plays gay in like everything. Anyway, yeah, I want to see it. I definitely want to see it. I'm very excited about it.
Well, I'm excited for you. I don't think I ever actually finished Penny Dreadful.
That's crazy to me. Like, it is a good ending. It is a good ending. It's only 3 seasons and they're all like 10 episodes, so it's easy to get through.
Feel like I have 4 episodes left and I have nothing to back that up with. I know that I got close to the end and I don't know. I think it was one of those, like, I forgot where I left off, so I just stopped watching.
Yeah, they really dive into, like, it gets weird with, like, some of the bad guys. I almost spoiled who the bad guy was. But then it also just dives really deep into, like, the emotional, like, trauma of some of the characters' pasts. So it's a weird 3rd season.
It is. All right, moving off of TV. and books and whatever. We'll sort off of books. Something broke. Some news broke here in Chicago, and it wouldn't have occurred to me to talk about it, but you mentioned it before the podcast. So tell me what you've got on libraries.
Yeah. So actually, as of today, the Chicago Public Library. Wow, this article. Oh, all right. No, I was reading it poorly. Chicago Sun-Times, the headline is Chicago Public Library to eliminate late fees, erase debt, and begin automatic renewals for up to 45 weeks. Starting today. Eliminate late fees and get rid of all the late fees that already exist.
I am going to make some assumptions here. Because you're the only person, and I didn't even read an article. I saw like a little headline about it earlier, something someone shared on social media or something. I would imagine that most people find this to be good news. Does that sound?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little different on this. I'm gonna go against the grain. I am all for them forgiving late fees because I'm sure that there are people who don't go to a library, like people don't go to a video store. Well, assuming that anybody still goes to a video store. But, there are times in my life where I owe the video store like $15. I was like, well, I can't go back there until I pay that off. So then I wound up just not going to the video store,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of all for that for a library. I do take some, exception to no late fees and 45 weeks worth of renewals.
Okay.
Well, I mean, think about that, right? So let's say you're really excited to read, I don't know, whatever, A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway, right? And you go down to your local library and you figure it's Hemingway, they got to have a copy or two, right? You go down there and you go into the card catalog and you flip through all the index cards or use a computer or whatever. And you walk over to the shelf and you find out it's out, right? So you do some inquiring and you find out that, yeah, it was checked out. A guy named Rob checked it out just yesterday. So 3 weeks, it should be back in 3 weeks. And you go, okay, 3 weeks. You come back and it's still gone. I mean, how do you keep a book for 45 goddamn weeks is what I'm trying to say. Because you're really depriving other people of its use.
Sure. Yeah.
All I'm saying is getting rid of late fees eliminates the incentive to bring back a book in what we'll call a timely fashion.
Okay, that's definitely one perspective. So I'll read a little bit. I'll read bits and pieces from the article about why they made that choice. We're removing one of the most important barriers to access. They say, all right, so basically what's happening is the measure, part of a series of library reforms that will officially be announced Monday, seeks to bring equity to a system that for years has locked out library users when they accrue $10 worth of fines, a penalty that disproportionately affects poor families who need free access to books and high-speed internet the most. Turns out that particularly in Chicago, the communities that aren't as socioeconomically well off, people are blocked for using libraries from that $10 fine, and as you move north in the city, that is not as evident. Basically, for anybody who's not from Chicago, the farther north you go, the more well-off the people are. Let's see. 1 of every 3 library card holders in the library's South District is locked out. In the North District and area north of North Avenue, only 1 in 6 card holders are locked out. So basically they're saying that it's a bigger hurdle for the people in poor areas to overcome than it is for people in the richer areas. So getting rid of that barrier makes it so that the people in poor areas are more likely to return to libraries because they aren't denied that access once they have those fines.
And again, I'm supportive of a forgiveness plan or something along those lines. I just, again, don't see what the incentive is for me to bring a book back to the library in less than 44 weeks. Because, I mean, obviously, it would just happen again, right? Once a book's 45 weeks late, you would incur fees again, and then you would still be locked out. I'm assuming something along those lines.
Well, and then here's the other part that I thought, at least kind of like strengthens their point a little bit. The data clearly shows that late fines are not effective in promoting the return of books or increasing the number of residents in compliance, while locking many community members out of the system. Building on our efforts to reform Chicago's historically regressive fines and fee systems, we bring those who need access the most back into the library. So basically they're saying, like, late fees, basically they're saying, if I get enough late fees, I'm just going to keep the book and never go back to the library. Instead of, eventually showing up and paying the late fee and bringing the book back. So it wasn't an effective tool for the problem that you're presenting.
All right. Well, I feel bad for anybody who's trying to get an Ernest Hemingway book starting next week. That's all I'm saying.
I feel good for all the 350,000 people who are locked out of the library that now can go back and access the internet and stuff.
Yeah, that's weird that you can't go use the internet if you owed late fees on books. Am I understanding that correctly?
I haven't been to a Chicago Public Library in a while, but
okay.
That's kind of what the article made it sound like. And I'm assuming you have to have a library card to sign in or something like that. I don't know.
I would think the two would be independent of one another.
Maybe that could be the change. Who knows?
See, that I would support that as a change. So, look, I want people to read books. I just want people who read books to be respectful of other people that also want to read books. That's really my angle on this.
Yeah. So now what we'll have to do is 3 years from now, we'll have to do a follow-up where we look and see how's the Chicago Public Library system doing.
I grew up in the Chicago Public Library system. I mean, a good portion of the books I read when I was just a little Livius came from there. The one on Foster. Yeah. The one on Foster and Kimball, the Albany Park
Nice.
Library. Spent a lot of time there as a kid. So, I mean, I have an adoration for the Chicago Public Library system. And even when I moved out to the burbs, I used to spend a ton of time. And that's where my frustration comes from. Book would be next, and you put yourself on the list, and they'd call you. Fancy libraries out here in the burbs, right? And that call wouldn't come, so you'd check, and they'd be like, yeah, sorry, so-and-so hasn't returned it yet. Well, fuck so-and-so for holding on to it. I hope you're charging them $8 a day because they're keeping me from the book I want to read.
So it's sounding like this is personal. This could be your Friday the 13th story.
This is how I start killing people who won't return library books in a timely fashion. Look, Rob, as somebody, I am talking about you here, as somebody that is known to read entire books in one sitting out of necessity, I would think that something less than 45 weeks is the right number of weeks. So
yes, I see your point, and I my hope. I think that typically you're a more optimistic person, but in this particular case, I would hope that removing the burden of the guilt of fees and stuff would make people feel like they owe it to the library to be more timely. I don't know. Or there's less, I don't know, taking the guilt away. Maybe that just means, all right, today's the day. I've got the book and I've got time to stop by the library. I'm just going to drop it off.
All right.
I could be wrong.
There will be follow-ups. I'm going to keep a very close eye on this situation to see if
you're calling every month. You're calling Lori Lightfoot's office.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the CPL lack of fines. How are we doing? Is there a count for the books? I mean, there could be a run on libraries at this point.
There's just looting.
Yeah, there's oh shit. I was gonna throw out an author name. I'm not going to. There's just copies of one particular author's book just kind of laying on a shelf. Everything else is gone, and it's just stuff nobody wants. So
that's so you get 45 weeks from now is when you're gonna have to check up, right?
Yes,
45 46, I guess. 46 weeks.
Correct.
It's fucking chaos in the libraries.
Fuck, man, I'm so glad that I'm done with the libraries. I haven't been in a library in years. I mean, the one time I went in is just because they remodeled the library. I spent a lot of time in when I moved out this way, so 25 years ago, and I kind of walked through, and it was a pretty remodel, but it felt like it lost, and it did, because libraries nowadays are as much as we just talked about internet access as they are about books. So I really felt like it was less about books, which hurt my feelings. a little bit. So,
So what I'm getting out of this is like you're taking a lot of this very personally.
I am. I absolutely am. Dude, when I moved out here and realized that they were like, oh, we can just get that book from another library for you. I was like, what? Like, you'll ask them to bring it here so I can borrow it? And they were like, yeah. So, look, are you familiar at all with the Cook Memorial Library?
No.
The Cook Memorial Library was started by something Cook, like in the 1930s or whatever. At any rate, this chick had a real hard-on for reading. She ran a local like book club, and she talked her husband into donating like 5 or 6 plots of land in Libertyville.
Okay.
Now, for anybody who's not familiar, it's a semi-affluent suburb in the northern suburbs of Chicago. Basically, not 15 minutes from the border with Wisconsin. Well, at one point, when they need money, they just sell off a plot of land. Like one of those plots of land was sold off, like when they built Hawthorne Mall. So I mean, like expensive land that they were left. At one point, I was talking to a girl trying to find a book many, many years ago. And she says, no, I don't see it. It's not in our library network. She was like, I'm going to put in a note and see if we can order it for you. I said, order it. She goes, yeah, like we buy a copy. And I was like, oh, no, don't do that. Like, I don't want the library to spend money on some shitty book that I want to read because it's a sequel to something I read or whatever, And she's like, oh, no, don't worry. We never use all of our budget for buying books. It's a pretty hefty budget. So they literally ordered a book
so you could
to
read
put it on
once.
their shelf so I could take it out. Yeah, that's how spoiled I was with a library out here.
And you kept it for 45 weeks.
No, I brought it back so that I wouldn't incur late fees and keep other people from reading it. Jesus,
wow.
Rob.
I don't know. It sounds like a very privileged stance you're coming from here.
Yeah. Dude, seriously. They were like, we'll just buy the book so you can borrow it and read it. I was like, get the fuck out of here, really? And she's like, oh, yeah, our budget for books. She's like, we'll never spend all of it. As a matter of fact, she said, if we spent the whole budget, we'd have to build a whole new library just to house the books. And you know what? A few years later, they rebuilt the entire library. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Hey, if I ever get super rich, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll do a Rob Memorial Library, even though I'm still alive.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But people should remember you from before you had money.
Yeah.
Anything else come up in book news this week?
I'm gonna throw one at you. And so there's been a trend lately of I want to say, I don't want to say non-authors, because obviously these people are writing books, but like people who aren't known as authors writing books. So Michael Mann, the guy that made Heat, is coming out with a book next year, and there was someone else, right? There's another non-author with a book coming out. Does that sound familiar?
Not even a little bit.
All right, hang on.
I know the Michael Mann thing, so I was kind of excited about that.
So Michael Mann, and then I had to go look at our list, so I stepped away for a second. Brian De Palma, who is a movie director, is got a book coming out in 2020 called Are Snakes Necessary? So I'm noticing a trend of, like, especially people in film making novels, which is like, you know what, stay in your lane, buddy, first of all. But then, so I'm scrolling through the books subreddit on Reddit, and I see a headline that starts out very interesting, but it does not sustain. So I'm going to read you the first part of it. Quentin Tarantino is writing a novel. So far, so good?
I mean, yeah.
Here's where it goes downhill. About a veteran who learns to love foreign films. That's exactly what my response.
I don't even know. I mean, you know what? Yeah, I mean, it could be all right. I'm still stuck on this thing about the book writing. Like, let's explore that concept. So Quentin Tarantino has written a few movies, most of them violent, right?
Yeah.
By and large, not this last one. This Hollywood thing, is that even his? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is that
it?
Him?
Is his? Yeah.
Okay, that one doesn't seem like it follows the trend of most of his other movies. And then that sounds like if he made a movie that only played at like the Cannes Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like those like Sundance channel movies that nobody ever watches. But now think slow, boring movie in book form.
I don't know how I feel
So
about
instead of 2 hours of boredom, you've got at least 6 or 7.
So he talked about it in an interview because they were interviewing him and they talked about like he's retiring from film, blah blah blah. Right now I'm working on a book and I've got this character who had been in World War II and he saw a lot of bloodshed there, and now he's back home and it's like the 50s and he doesn't respond to movies anymore. He finds them juvenile after everything he's been through. As far as he's concerned, Hollywood movies are movies. So then all of a sudden he starts hearing about these foreign films by Kurosawa and Fellini, and so he's like, well, maybe they might have something more than this phony Hollywood stuff. So he finds himself drawn to these things, and some of them he likes and some of them he doesn't like, and some of them he doesn't understand, but he knows he's seeing something. Did you stay awake through that entire...
Jesus Christ, that was... No, I'm literally stifling a yawn. Jesus. So the question becomes... much money are these people getting paid to do that? So is it a vanity project? Is it like, I'm Michael Mann. I'd like to at least say I wrote a novel, Close friend of the show, David Duchovny. He's doing music, right? Not super successful at it, but he's doing it because, in his heart, he likes making music.
Right.
Likes writing stories. I don't think he did a ton, money in those. They weren't wildly successful. Is that it? Is it just like a passion project? Or are they getting paid like huge money to do these?
I think the De Palma novel is the one that's coming out on Hard Case Crime.
All right,
books.
so no.
So that's definitely not a big money project. That sounds more like a passion project. I'm sure Michael Mann's going to land on one of the top 5, the big 5. And Tarantino, he'll get a 7-figure advance.
Yeah, because that makes sense if you're going to get paid a lot of money. But I just, I don't know. I don't know. Hell, we could review it because only one of us shies away from books we know are going to be fucking terrible. So I'm in. We can review it, but I predict it's going to be awful.
Wow. There's a little underhanded jab at me right there, and that's the second time you've made that jab.
Would you say that it's an inaccurate jab?
No, it's not. Well, the inaccuracy would be the only one of us part of it, but I don't have any evidence to back my side up, so sure. I'm going to have to go with you on this. I am the one who is the only one who shies away.
Seriously, I look at him like, and this came up again for me personally the other day, whatever you had what we had reviewed books in 2019, like what the ratings were.
Right.
And I was like, we're not reading enough garbage. Which I realize sounds like a counterintuitive thing to say, but I go back to Books, Beer, and Bullshit. Like, those guys purposely got bad beers because it was important for them to occasionally drink bad beer and talk about it. And I feel like we should be occasionally be reading books that we expect to be bad. Now, we could be surprised. Not likely. I think it's happened the other way around, where we read an author that we've heard great things about, and we're like, what the fuck did we just read?
Well, that... Katerina book by James Frey, we didn't expect much out of it. That ended up being enjoyable.
That's true. And then we had Thomas Harris on the other end of that.
Yeah, Karimora or whatever.
We thought really excited, thought it would be great, and turned out to be a unedited pile of garbage.
Yeah. Well, are you saying that we need to... Well, our calendar is freeing up, so now is going to be the time of year that we do... jump into some shitty stuff if we want to.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out. Yeah. That's why I always like the Wheel of Meat. See, that was one of those that could go either way.
That's how we got that Star Wars book.
There is, but we got a book we liked out of that too. It's about that woman. She wound up living in an inn by a lake.
Yeah, the Sarah Gruens by the Water's Edge.
Yeah, by the Water's Edge, which was fine.
I recently acquired a British first edition hardcover of that book, by the way.
Very nice. As Rob's collection continues to grow. I don't know if we mentioned this enough on the podcast. Rob is seeking to get a physical copy of every book we've reviewed. We review a lot of books digitally. So Rob has been working on this for a few months now.
Yep.
And that's I think it's interesting. I think it's commendable. And I am very excited to see if he completes it. Now, completing it might be a little bit of a challenge because, this podcast is still going. So it's never complete, right? Until we.
And I'm going to have to reach out to that one author for a print copy of Backdooring the Brat.
Oh, I doubt that actually is a thing.
I know. So some of them, it might be impossible for some of them because I'm sure some of the stuff we've read has only ever been available digitally, but like that Human Centipede, I don't know if we can get that as a book. I'd love to have that on my shelf, though.
Words no one has ever said before.
Adam Millard is listening, and he's like, "What?"
I don't want to break this up, but some breaking news. I mean, from 4 days ago, but I just saw that. I am going to tell you that I just went on an emotional roller coaster ride while we were talking. At some point, I was on the Bloody Disgusting page from looking up one of the Jason things, and they'll show you like what the other articles are, like on the side. Tony Todd returning as the Candyman.
Oh, I saw that
in the Jordan Peele produced sequel.
So that's kind of like your Tarantino thing. Like it started out great.
It started out great. Let me explain. I really liked the Candyman movies. 2 of them, right? Yeah, there were 2 of them. I really enjoyed those. Those are Clive Barker adaptations. Big fan of Clive Barker's. Jordan Peele. Here's my exposure to Jordan Peele. Get Out, which I thought was okay. And then that fucking Twilight Zone debacle where he put together shitty Twilight Zone episode after shitty Twilight Zone episode. So I'm a little lukewarm on him being given the reins to Candyman. But it's nice to see that someone's still paying attention to the Candyman story, I guess. And it's being filmed in Chicago, dude. We could actually get in on this maybe.
I actually work with, I think, 2 or 3 people that are like actors, like as their primary job, and they do stunts, they do acting and stuff like that. So like, I know people that are in the Chicago film scene.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being an extra in a Candyman movie. I doubt I'll get on if Jordan Peele hears my review of his Twilight Zone episode shows, but
man, there's a scene in the new Candyman where it's like, somebody kill those 2 book nerds.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, that's kind of I'm kind of excited about that. I want Clive Barker to make a significant return to the just to the his presence in the public, if nothing else. So I feel like he's somebody we kind of let go of in the late 80s, early 90s and didn't look back to. And I think that he's written a couple of one of my favorite books. I mean, books that are in my top 20 or 25, which I know sounds like, a lot, but I've read a lot of books too. So
I never got into Clive Barker like you did. Not that I didn't care for him, just never explored any of his writing or anything. But I did see something recently, a video on YouTube where someone was talking about, does the movie Scream stand up like over time? And so they just look at what Scream is, when it came out, and blah blah blah. But then they start talking about Wes Craven in general, and like how some of the stuff that he made was just like pretty astonishing for its time and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's nice to see people kind of get the recognition they deserve. This video is very complimentary of Wes Craven and all he did, because like he did Nightmare on Elm Street and he did tons of other stuff. So it was cool to see someone. Scream was kind of the beginning of the whole like half self-referential, self-deprecating, like the horror story knows about the tropes of the horror story thing. So that was kind of a pivotal moment, I think, for at least part of the slasher scene.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. It was also, I think, and I mean, we get an expert like Jesse on this, but like the revival of the slasher.
Sure.
Like we'd kind of gone away, and if at the same time, when Scream came out, they were on like Jason in space, where wasn't even being taken seriously anymore. So I do think
Yeah.
that Scream was a little bit of the revival of the slasher, which
Yeah.
is interesting. I mean, those movies, I mean, slasher movies are far more approachable than, say, like cosmic horror, right? Like more realistic. Like it could just be that your neighbor fucking flipped out and put on a Halloween mask and is walking around with a fucking machete versus, whatever.
Yeah.
People turning into werewolves or whatever the other
Like some
options
crazy, like, bitch crawling out of a well.
Yeah, but you got to admit, man, at least that first one, that was fucking creepy as fuck.
That was fucking terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. The Ring, in case anybody is not aware of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not talking about, like, the Batman movies, because then you fall down a well at the bat. Anyway. Ring. Wow.
Ring.
I didn't know we were going to talk so much about horror in this episode, but it really became...
We're kicking off October, man.
Yeah, it's true. Booktober.
All right. Any other book-related stuff?
I'm tapped out, I think.
All right. I want to return to something we mentioned a little bit on the last episode we had Jesse on. And I mentioned I went down a rabbit hole of the first ever YouTube video.
I forgot about this.
Here's
what's your update?
Well, I use this computer just for the podcast. It's in its own room. On rare occasion, I've used it to take like a work conference call on Skype or whatever. But essentially, whatever tabs I leave open stay open the following week. And I sit down and I look at the tabs and I'm like, all right, don't need this anymore. Don't need this. I'm like, oh, I had this tab open. I should make a note in my phone or something that I wanted to look into something. So, for example, the allegory of the cave. That came up when we had Misty on.
It doesn't ring a bell at all.
I believe it came out when we had Misty on. Or it was something from the book from Blake Crouch's...
okay.
Not Dark Matter, whatever it was that we reviewed. Like, I have a note to read this article. Recursion. So last week, I was waiting for Rob and Jesse to get on. So I'm on YouTube. And I looked at something in one of the recommended videos. I'm like, this fucking video they're recommending is from 9 years ago. How the fuck is a 9-year-old video going to be relevant? And in some cases, I mean, I guess it could be. But I started thinking about how long videos stay on YouTube. So I thought, well, let's see what the first YouTube video was. So I did, I Googled it. And I found out that the first video was by one of the co-founders of YouTube named Jawed Karim. And it was him. It's called Me at the Zoo. And it is 18 seconds where he basically says, like, here I am at the zoo. And there's some, like, animals in the background. He's like, look at those animals, blah, blah, blah. That's the end of it. This has 76 million views. And it's from April 23rd, 2005. So it's 14 years old, almost 14 and a half years old. And the more interesting part about it is that it's getting comments to this day. But it's become weird.
What kinds of comments, Livius?
Yeah, so somebody hacked Jawad's, which is odd because he's a founder of YouTube, and you would think that it wouldn't happen, has hacked his page. And essentially, it's a trade-off for subscriptions. So if you have a channel, you can go here and post in the comments that you want someone to subscribe to your channel and that you'll immediately subscribe back. So to build up a subscriber base. There had been, give me a second, I believe since we started recording this episode, which was, 40 minutes ago, there have been about 20 comments added to a video from 14 years ago on YouTube. And most of them are just somebody trying to get someone to subscribe to their channel. I'll read you some. These are the 6 most recent I'll read. The first one says, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And that says moon landing next to it. And then it says, these trunks are really long. That's pretty much all I have to say. And that says modern communication era next to it. Let's see. Sub to sub. I don't want no. somebody in 2019, sub to sub, sub to sub, I'm loyal, not a joke, sub to sub, I'm loyal, and so on and so forth for 3.5 million comments.
That's fucking insane, dude.
It's
so you have to do it.
I have to subscribe.
No, you have to post a sub to sub comment on there.
But dude, if I do, then I have to subscribe to a bunch of people because I want to be loyal like these other people are. And then all I'll do, my whole time will be spent signed into the Book Podcast YouTube, in case you weren't aware that we had one of those. Subscribe to
subbing.
Yeah. So
all
listen,
right.
Here's what I'll say. If we get in the next week, before the next episode, 20 subscribers on our YouTube channel, I will do the sub to sub experiment on the Me at the Zoo video. How do you like that transition?
There, I like that.
Yeah. We did get like 3 new subscribers in the last 3 days, which is a little weird. Not sure what caused that.
I noticed. Well, I'm looking at our recent videos, and our episodes don't pull a lot on YouTube. They're just kind of automatically posted there. We really don't expect them to do anything, but every now and then, one will pop and get like 80, a couple hundred views, something like that. However, our 3 from Hell movie review from 1 week ago has already got 419 views.
It's like a 4 million% increase over our Tales from the Crust. Yeah, Tales from the Crust episode with David James Keaton.
So I'm thinking people are like, oh man, I want to sub these guys.
Amazing. Anyway, there's a list of the 10 oldest videos on YouTube. There's the one first backflip on YouTube. It's a guy doing a backflip off the roof of his home. That's probably the only one that looks interesting.
First backflip on YouTube. Love it. Very good.
Dude, well, just imagine being the person that like seriously found this and you're like, there's only one video. What can I put on there to be the second video on YouTube or whatever, the 10th video or 9th or whatever?
I know. I'll backflip off of my garage. There you go.
Yeah. There you go. So as soon as a new video service opens up, Rob, I want you to backflip off your apartment.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
That's terrible.
So I will do a little like window into Rob's life really quick. First of all, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever heard the term scuttle hatch?
I don't believe so.
If you had an apartment that you were renting and you got an email that said scuttle hatch as the subject from your landlord, would you be nervous?
Yeah.
So here's the body of the email. Could you please look up at your ceiling in your unit to see if you have a scuttle hatch and let us know. This could be in any room or closet of your unit. So scuttle hatch is like that little attic pull down thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I replied, I don't have one of those. And then this was like 4 or 5 days ago. Today I get a text message from one of the people in another apartment asking if I replied to the landlord's email and then asking if I've heard animal scratching coming from my ceiling.
Oh. That's interesting. So first thing you do is you reply to that text message by saying, don't reply to that email, it's a virus.
That's well, I didn't do that. I didn't have that thought.
All right.
But I also don't have any animal scratching coming from the ceiling, so I feel pretty good about that.
Did you ask them if they still hear a baby crying?
Fuck. That'd have been the best response. No animal scratching, but do you hear that baby?
Oh my god, dude. See, I know, but that's the thing. You can't do it, right? Like, these are your neighbors. You have to live next to them. But
right.
If only we lived in a world where it was okay, you know what I mean? To just respond to things in the ways that we're pretty sure we should respond.
Yeah.
But then our judgment, better judgment takes over. And
yeah. Responsible adults, blah, blah, blah.
All right.
Stupid.
You ready to talk about what's coming up next?
Very excited about what's coming up next.
I would be more excited if I didn't feel like I was under the gun. Again, more on this next week. We're going to be reviewing John Horner Jacobs' new book. Now, we reviewed... This is where I'm going to put the...
Incorruptibles?
I was like, I know it's not the Incredibles, because I know that's a totally different thing, but I did not come up with the Incorruptibles. Many, many moons ago, probably 6 years ago, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think it was 2013, yeah.
It's pretty, it's been a long time, but his new book is actually 2 novellas sandwiched into one book, and it's called A Lush and Seething Hell, and it is cosmic horror. So a great way to kick off October, for our first book of October, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm very excited about it. Nice to be back to a book after this 1 week off.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully, in 2 weeks, we can stop like vague casting. We have an episode that I'm pretty sure is going to come together, and I'm really excited about it. Now, just for anybody who's paying attention, the last time we acted like this about an episode, it wound up being David Duchovny.
Yeah.
So you have to think. I'm not saying think movie actor or TV actor or whatever. Just think to yourself, man, if they're treating it like this, they must be pretty excited for what it is. And I got to be honest with you, pretty fucking excited. And that's why I won't mention who it is. Because, I mean, if it doesn't happen, I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'll be let down and angry and bitter. But right now, I'm just not going to jinx it. Just know that 2 episodes from now, I expect to have something that, I'll be honest, I didn't think was possible 8 years ago. 9 years ago, 8.5 years ago, we started this podcast. And even a year ago, probably didn't think it was going to happen. And now it looks like it's happening. So I am very, very excited.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap it up for our first interlude in practically 6 months. Come back for Jacobs next week and the big exciting thing the week after. Until then, I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livius. Then keep reading.